There seems to be a slowdown of DSO purchases. If I'm a solo office, should I go with a DSO or do I go with somebody that's coming at me with private equity money? One question I wanted to ask you is there seems to be a slowdown of DSO purchases. And tell me if I'm wrong. That's what it seems like to me. It just seems like it's slowed a little bit because they're being a little bit better with the money and they're actually asking for better ROI now. Like they're making it more accountable. So if I'm a solo office, should I be wanting to be bought? If I want to go down this way, should I go with a DSO that's a set corporation, a growing corporation, or do I go with somebody that's coming at me with private equity money? Because it's not necessarily the same thing, right? It could be two different businesses coming at me to purchase my practice. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a slowdown last year for sure. We know what happened with the economy and we know what
Sure.
happened with inflation and with interest rates. And that affected everybody and everything. So there was a little bit of shift in the thinking with a lot of the DSOs that came in and were more proactive and aggressive in looking at getting an X number of new affiliations come in. There were a
Right.
lot of DSOs that were very good, strong DSOs, but made the decision that, hey, let's focus now on what we already have and really helping to build and grow those, what you would call same store or, what they already had in place rather than
Yeah.
acquiring more. I think, though, it's kind of a catch 22 as well, because while there was a little bit of slowdown in the acquisitions and we're kind of back to where we were a year and a half, 2 years ago right now, it didn't stop there. The sheer number of DSOs is still growing dramatically. DSO is just really a terminology, it's semantics, it means dental support organization, but you could be anywhere in size from a few practices up to 1,500 of the heartlands of the world. But there
Hmm.
are all shapes and sizes of DSOs as well. And I think that's something that you have to remember. There are over 2,500 DSOs right now. So a
It's
lot of
crazy.
people, like they do with anything, right? They'll just say something like, we all hear in the dental world, someone sitting in a chair saying, I hate dentists. Well,
Right.
does that mean you hate every dentist or you hate me personally or what are you talking about? So it's the same thing. There's a love hate thing with DSOs, but DSO is, there's an expression out there. If you know one DSO, you know one DSO.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
2,500 of them. So it's important to understand that there are many types of DSOs, from the ones that are just, we would say, going out there and getting, affiliations with GPs to specialty DSOs to alternate models. We have mobile dentistry DSOs. We have
Yeah.
DSOs that are really what they call dental partnerships organizations or DPOs. And so that's a little bit of a different model. I think what you have to recognize here is that what it really just means is if you feel that you're 3 to 5 or 3 to 7 years away from clinically retiring and you have a large practice, there's a much greater chance at some point that your exit strategy is going to be with a group or a DSO than it is with another dentist. I mean, we work
Okay.
with practices that are, I have to be honest, I can't believe how many huge practices there still are out there. I mean, we did one the other day that's a single location that's doing 6.5, $7 million.
That's
I mean, there are
great.
still practices out there doing 3, 4, 5, 6 million in a single
Hmm.
location. What's the
Hmm.
chances of another dentist getting $6 million from the bank to actually buy you?
Yeah.
Things have just changed. So I think what
Right.
you have to recognize is you have to understand the differences in the DSOs and then decide and work with an advisor that can give you some insight as to what type of DSO is best for you,
Hmm.
why, and then also look at it because you could get the same price, so to speak, from two different DSOs, but the terms are completely different. And what we try to do is understand what the DSOs are. We get profiles on them. We understand what they offer. We understand their reputations, how they take care of you. Basically, what their how do they operate? And they work in certain cycles and they work with different business models in terms of
Hmm.
where they're going to go until they decide that they are going to recap and sell themselves. So, to be honest with you, the quick answer to this is when it comes down to it, if a practice gets appraised by us and then they just want to know who should they speak to and they're open to a DSO affiliation, there are many reasons why you should be. There are
Hmm.
certainly for some dentists, I am very clear with them. You're not really a fit for them. They're not really a fit for you. And we're very clear about that with them. So we try to
Okay.
at least get that. But if they are eligible for a DSO and they just don't know where to go, it's important to choose the right DSO. And choosing the right DSO is about really what's important to you. How many years are you going to stay aboard? More importantly, is you're not getting 100% of your purchase price at close. There are terms,
Oh,
and some of it is paid off in certain manners. Some dentists can really use more cash at close. Some of them are already doing well financially, and for them, the big thing with the DSO is they want to work with a company that is giving them stock in the DSO, so to speak. So they get a piece of that, which grows over the 3 to 5 years they're sticking around, and then at
right.
the end, they end up recapping, and your stock is worth, you're almost getting paid a second time for your practice. And for some of them, that piece is more important. So you have to really look at what the dentist wants and
Right.
then decide who's going to be the best DSO, because everybody lumps them together. It's like everybody says dentists are bad or dentists are scary or whatever it
Right.
is.
Right.
Not all DSOs are bad. Not all DSOs are good. There are a lot of models to choose from, a lot of shapes and sizes, and some of them, yes, are private equity backed. And the other thing to recognize is, the ones that are private equity backed, they have a fund in place and they have the money there, so they really have to spend that money. That's why they're
Yeah.
going out and acquiring practices, because they promise their investors that they're going to spend that money, build a group together, and then at some point, obviously, they're going to fine tune it, streamline the expenses, increase the collections, and
Yeah.
then as a unit, they sell. And that's what makes the stock portion the most exciting part of this for a lot of people. But what you don't know, you don't know. And I think it's important to work with people that understand that there are options out there. And what's good for you right next door to the next guy that has the same size practice may not be necessarily good for that person.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I was hoping you'd kind of go in that direction to explain the differences and all, because there's so many iterations. Now, I hate to pin you down like this, but I got to ask, are there a couple things that when you go to evaluate an office or really take a look if they're a fit, is there anything that you see that would automatically you'd say, you know what, you need to fix this before we can even talk? What are those red flags so that, because managers like myself, if I've been with my boss for so long, like I want to make sure his practice is ready to sell. And I'm thinking of some of the things that I would see would go, maybe Tony would like this, maybe it wouldn't. But I'm sure there's some stuff that like maybe paper charts or something like that. What do you see that makes them go, you're not ready for prime time?
Well, I don't think there's any question. I mean, if you're not digital, and you don't have to have all the toys out there. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that's a bonus in some ways. But we still see a lot of practices that they'll they'll have great capital equipment and all that, like brand new, and they invest all this money now, thinking that it's going to raise their value all this money, and that's not a linear raise. And I think that's one of the issues we find. But I think there are still some people that are way behind in technology, and
Hmm.
certainly if you see that right up front, it's going to obviously greatly, because really it's a supply and demand thing. The reason that practice values have gone up and we're at a peak right now is because of the DSO market, because they look
Hmm.
at valuation the way it should be looked at, and most
Yeah.
dentists still think, okay, even if I'm not fully digital, or even if I'm not that strong in this and that, I have a high collection amount. That's true, but you can have a very high collection amount, have a huge overhead, and
Yeah.
you're overpaying for so many aspects of what it takes to run the practice, or you're way behind in other aspects. And we can see that early on when they fill out the initial questionnaire, or they give us their profit loss document. It's very important to recognize, though, that you can't just look. I mean, someone who's not trained in doing this can't just look at a tax return and look at your profit, because your profit's meant to be low, because of the expenses that you're putting in that are both personal, one-time expenses, things like
Hmm.
depreciation and all that, which is not operations of a practice. So you can't look at that and say, oh, look at my profit, because things have to be adjusted. So we can look at something and say, okay, not digital, don't have too many active patients. Why is that?
Yeah.
We can see certain things, like certain expenses that are really sky high,
Hmm.
that there's something going on there. They're either not paying attention or whatever it may be. And one of the things that's really interesting that I see all the time is, I still can't believe the number of practices that haven't increased their fees in 10 years.
Oh God, don't get me started. That is one of my big pet
I
peeves.
mean, I don't get it.
Every
These
class I teach, I just go
these
crazy on
dentists
this.
are they're going out to get lunch every day,
Yeah.
and they're buying a sandwich and soup that was cost $3 more than it did 6 months ago,
Right,
and
right.
their fees have stayed exactly the same in 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a part to me that I'm like, there's a
I
lot of things that you can do now. Maybe right now is not the right time. Now we'll evaluate it, because I want you to see it.
Mhm.
I want you to
Mhm.
actually see it on paper, but you're probably better off working on some things for the next 6 to 12 months. And
Yeah.
we can see that sometimes early on, but I think for a lot of them, all they think about is my collection number, and that's all.
Yeah. Well, and for so long, that's what all those sales were based on, like
Oh,
here's
absolutely. It
production,
was
here's
just based
collection.
on collections. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear more? Follow the link for the full episode.